Alrighty, hi guys. So in this video, I'm going to go over how phenylketonuria works. So that's kind of a tongue twister there. It's called phenylketonuria, though they abbreviate it to PKU. And this is an absolutely fascinating disease, and it actually ties back to some stuff we learned about in week 5. The symptoms associated with phenylketonuria, it's actually an amino acid problem. So if you remember what an amino acid is, going back to this chart that we talked about in week 5. Yeah, I know you wanted to forget it. This chart was the codon translation chart where it said, here's the 3 RNA bases, and it tells you which amino acid goes into the protein. Well, it turns out your body has to get these amino acids from somewhere in order to be able to make proteins out of them. And there's most of the amino acids, our body is able to make them. We have enzymes that are capable of making the amino acids. But a few of them we can't. We don't have the enzymes to make them, so the only way to get them is from our diet. These are called the essential amino acids. Phenylalanine, which is up here in the corner, it's the PHE. Phenylalanine is one of these essential amino acids. It's one of the few that our body doesn't have the ability to make. And so the only way we get it is from our diet. Now, that's fine and dandy. The other half of the story here is our body uses an enzyme called phenylalanine hydroxylase. Phenylalanine hydroxylase, also known as PAH for abbreviation. Now notice, that's not the PAH, notice it's not italicized. That's very important. It may not seem like it, but that's very important. Genes we always italicize. Because the gene for phenylalanine hydroxylase, the one that's the problem for phenylketonuria, is PAH as well. So the gene would be written PAH in italics. The enzyme would be written PAH, not in italics. Tricky, huh? Either that, or with some of our programs, we can't italicize with typing. And so we just have to write the gene PAH or something like that. But there's your fun fact of the day. We italicize genes and we don't italicize proteins. Anyway, the job of this protein, phenylalanine hydroxylase, is to take this amino acid phenylalanine and turn it into tyrosine. If you look over here, so you don't need to know these. These are the molecular structures of the 2 amino acids. So this one on the left is phenylalanine. This one on the right is the amino acid tyrosine. Now notice the only difference between the two is tyrosine has this extra oxygen-hydrogen group over here. That's called a hydroxyl group. That's actually makes it an alcohol. Fun thing for that. Okay, anyway, that's a hydroxyl group off there. And so this enzyme, what it's doing is it's taking phenylalanine and it's adding a hydroxyl group to it. Now, if you remember with my enzyme naming rules back in week, 3? We were talking about how the enzyme's name usually says what it does. Well, phenylalanine hydroxylase is no different. Phenylalanine hydroxylase is ACE, always means enzyme. So the ACE means enzyme. Phenylalanine, it's an enzyme that takes phenylalanine, and hydroxylase, it adds a hydroxyl to it. So it's an enzyme that takes phenylalanine and adds a hydroxyl group to it. Enzyme says what it does. You don't necessarily need to know that there. That's just a bit of the background in case it helps you. So that's this whole enzyme's job, is to take some of the phenylalanine, not all the phenylalanine, because you still need phenylalanine for your proteins, but it takes some of the phenylalanine in your body, or that you eat, and turns it into tyrosine. And tyrosine is extremely important in your body. It's used to make the thyroid hormones, T3 and T4. It's used to make melanin, which is the protein that is used in pigment in your skin and your hair. It's used for a lot of things in the body, as well as just your average everyday proteins. You need tyrosine in most of your proteins in your body, just like you need phenylalanine and all the other ones. So here's here's kind of where we get a double whammy. Phenylketonuria is a problem with, we don't have phenylalanine hydroxylase, which means I can't convert my phenylalanine into tyrosine. That means all the phenylalanine that I eat stays phenylalanine. None of it gets turned into tyrosine. Now, I'll still be able to get a little bit of tyrosine from my diet, from eating foods and other routes and pathways. I can still get from A to B, but they're not going to be as efficient. We're not going to move it as fast. And so I'm still going to have a buildup of this, because basically all of the phenylalanine is staying phenylalanine, and I'm going to have a shortage of tyrosine. Does that make sense so far? So we're going to have a deficiency in everything that requires tyrosine. That's why people that have phenylketonuria are pale and have pale hair, because they're struggling to get enough tyrosine to make melanin to pigment their skin and their hair, and so it comes out whiter. They would probably, I would suspect, also have difficulties with being tired a lot because of lack of thyroid hormones, but that's one I don't fully know. The other problem is patients, as you're learning in your study this week, patients with phenylketonuria struggle heavily with mental disorders. But when they're born, they're normal. So that's the interesting thing about this. Turns out phenylalanine, you need it in small amounts to make proteins, but if you get too much of it, it's poisonous to nerve cells in specific. Scientists are still trying to figure out why. But it turns out phenylalanine is poisonous if you get too much of it in your blood. So if you're eating phenylalanine, a normal person is able to convert half of the phenylalanine over to tyrosine. But if you can't convert half of it over to tyrosine, now you've got twice as much phenylalanine in your blood as you're used to having, as the body is designed to handle. And so now all of a sudden it's poisonous because you got too much of it, because you're not converting it into tyrosine and getting rid of it. So because the brain is made of nerve cells, it starts poisoning the brain cells, and so they start dying off and you start getting mental difficulties. It can also cause seizures. It can cause, occasionally it can cause deformities with nerve function in the extremities and things like that as well, for the same reason, because it's poisonous. The effects are most telltale in the brain because there's more nerve cells in the brain, but it's effective elsewhere too. So having too much phenylalanine is the problem, because I'm not getting rid of it fast enough. So that gets to how we fix the problem. So the babies are normal. So first off, the babies are normal because babies, their mother, because it's an autosomal recessive disease, their mother usually has a working phenylalanine hydroxylase enzyme. And so when they're in gestation, when the baby is developing in the mother's womb, the mother's working enzyme is processing all of the phenylalanine she eats, or is processing half the phenylalanine she eats into tyrosine. And so the baby's getting balanced amounts. So they're born normal. It's only when the baby's on its own that we start getting a slight buildup, and so it's a gradual effect. And that's why they actually test them right off the bat when they're born, because that way they can test to make sure to see if they have the problem before the poison starts building up and starts damaging their brain cells. So now to the fixing it. The way that we fix this, I suppose so in later weeks, we're going to learn how in the future we'll be able to hopefully alter genes, but the way that you can resolve the symptoms is make sure that the baby just doesn't get too much phenylalanine. If you alter their diet to where they only consume half the amount of phenylalanine that they're used to, then they won't have sufficient levels of phenylalanine in the blood to poison their brain. And so Their phenylalanine levels stay normal, even though I don't have anything converting phenylalanine to tyrosine, because I never achieve toxic levels, never hurts the brain, and they develop normally. So that's how PKU works. Fascinating, huh? You break one thing in the body and all sorts of things can go wrong. Body is a very intricate network, and we find that with these genetic disorders, a lot of things can go wrong with a simple base pair mutation. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped.